Some people claim that Squaresoft's 1995 RPG Chrono Trigger is the single greatest role-playing game of all time. To be quite honest, I can't make a convincing case to the contrary. But then, Chrono Trigger really was more or less destined for greatness. It was made by an RPG dream team, and one of the real dream teams, not like Nintendo's so-called Ultra 64 dream team. On one hand, you had the core staff behind Final Fantasy, led by series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. On the other, you had Dragon Quest, led by Yuji Horii. These two very different men brought together their very different visions of what RPGs can and should be, and somehow managed to reconcile those ideas beautifully. Most of Chrono Trigger's DNA resembles 16-bit Final Fantasy, which should be pretty obvious when you first start the game and learn that you're going to fight bad guys with the Active Time Battle System 2.0. This was, after all, a Square production. And much like classic Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger featured a linear, twisting, and thoroughly epic plot. Players went from humble roots to saving the future from a brutal apocalypse in record time. Paradoxes were averted. Alien menaces were destroyed. It looked and sounded great, too. Chrono Trigger graced us with wonderful bitmap graphics and a fantastic soundtrack by Yasunori Mitsuda and Nobuo Uematsu at the top of their respective games. Each and every chapter of the game offered its own unique mechanic, minigame, or challenge. It was in every way a lean, efficient take on the RPG. Its streamlined feel probably had a lot to do with the Dragon Quest influence. While the grand scale of Chrono Trigger's plot didn't feel much like contemporary Dragon Quest, which had begun to structure its narrative around small, self-contained vignettes, the sheer approachability of Chrono Trigger came very much from the Yuji Horii school of design. By 1995, Final Fantasy had abandoned limited character growth mechanics in favor of the expansive job and materia systems that allowed freeform party development. Chrono Trigger, however, featured a half-dozen characters with 8 fixed skills apiece. Now, limited as those character dynamics may sound, in practice they proved to be anything but restrictive. The ATB 2.0 system introduced 2 unique concepts to Chrono Trigger's combat: position-based tactics and combos. The positioning rules offered an interesting midpoint between the line-up-and-swing-at-bad-guys approach of most RPGs and the tactical style of Ultima or Lunar the Silver Star. Players didn't really have control over where the characters placed themselves in a given battle. That was determined by the enemy party composition and the setting. The proximity to enemies and to other party members dictated a character's capabilities. Close up against a foe? Use a short-range attack like Chrono's Spinning Sword Strike. Have to reach across a long distance? Try lining up multiple foes to execute a long-range slash, or something along the lines of Lucas Fire Blast. Better yet, you could harness the combo system to make use of multiple characters' capabilities. As the party members unlocked their respective skills, they would also gain access to combination techniques that allowed them to attack foes in tandem. The party makeup at any given time gave players access to completely different types of combo attacks, including massive 3-person super techniques. These amounted to logical mashups of the techniques being combined, and while they could be powerful, they also had their limitations and drawbacks. A combo consumed the turn and tech points of all characters involved, so in some cases you were better off attacking singly or holding off on combos to conserve power. What's really surprising is that fighting enemies in Chrono Trigger never gets old, despite the fact that your party works under such limitations and each and every encounter in the game is predefined. There are no random battles here. Yet regardless of the limited palette of combat capabilities available in Chrono Trigger, each battle played out differently and required its own specific tactics depending on your current team and their individual gear. This was especially true if you had recruited the game's secret character, who couldn't innately perform triple techs and had to waste his vital accessory slot on items to enable those combos. The constant push and pull of gameplay, and the fact that pretty much any party composition could make a valid and winning team, helped make Chrono Trigger endlessly fun to replay. In fact, it might be the most replayable RPG ever. Chrono Trigger introduced the concept of New Game Plus to RPGs, allowing players to revisit the story from the start with all their in-game levels and equipment intact, and they could jump to the final battle at almost any time, experiencing all manner of alternate endings depending on where in the story they beat the game again. It helped that it was a story worth revisiting and replaying. The small cast featured all sorts of unique characters drawn from across time and space, from a cave woman to a steam-powered robot, each with their own lovable personality. With its limited character building and largely linear plot, Chrono Trigger is basically the antithesis of the classic PC gamer concept of the RPG. And yet, it manages to be a masterful representation of the genre by playing up its own strengths. It doesn't attempt to adhere to a genre formula or someone else's rules. Instead, it's a middle ground between 2 different schools of console RPG design thought. A brilliant compromise that manages to be entertaining for newcomers and pro players alike. With so much replay value and so much sheer good-heartedness on display, Chrono Trigger is truly one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and that makes it a game I can return to again and again, especially with a wonderful portable DS remake. For more wallowing in the past, keep reading usgamer.net, and subscribe to our YouTube channel too.